Welcome to the L.I.T Show. We are here to serve and uplift women from every background by empowering change spiritually, physically, mentally, and socially.
We hold to the belief that if you are willing to strengthen your spiritual life, then your physical, mental, and social strength will follow.
I'm Janie.
And I'm Britt.
And we are Lit. All right, well, today we have a special guest with us, and we're going to talk about sobriety. His name is Daniel Perry, and he's my husband.
Hey, Daniel. This is my brother.
Hey, Britt.
Don't we look alike?
Yes.
It's so good to be with y'all today.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Yes, we are. Well, we want to talk about your sobriety and your journey. We're just going to get right into it. What was your life like before sobriety?
So life before starting a recovery journey was very empty. It was very I think the best word to describe it would be unstable. I could never fully commit to anything. My life was definitely had absolutely no direction whatsoever. I had a lot of different interests, but I never had a set path as far as a career or a hobby or anything like that. I definitely wasn't serving the church. I wasn't serving the Lord. I was very much lost, and for the most part, I was afraid a lot of times, afraid to face who I was and what God had in store for me, because I firmly believe that God has a plan for all of us, and I think that a lot of times before recovery, the drug use was my way of running away from God's plan for my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the turning point that made you decide to get sober?
So there wasn't any actual, you hear so many testimonies about guys being in prison and really having some kind of traumatic life event. So I was in a situation in life where I was actually pretty comfortable within my drug use. I was living in a halfway decent environment where it didn't really matter what I did. Of course, I wasn't living successfully at this point. I wasn't working a job or anything like that, but I didn't have to leave that situation. I could have just stayed right there. So I think for me, what happened was it was definitely a, you ever heard of divine intervention?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had a very spiritual moment where God he put complete conviction on my heart to be like, hey, this is enough. This has gone too far. Because there wasn't anything physically that was preventing me from staying exactly where I was and being exactly who I was. I mean, I was on the verge of being homeless, but still, I had a roof over my head. And I think that it was all a very spiritual moment that brought me to, hey, you got to snap out of this.
It's like he revealed himself to you and you were like, wow.
You got to turn your life around. And I didn't know what that looked like at all. I didn't, I just knew that the situation that I was in, it was done. There was no more of that. There was not another night of what I was in. And I removed myself from that situation and didn't know what to do, didn't know what the rest of what that would look like, but I just knew that I couldn't be there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. Britt has some questions for you.
How did you begin your sobriety journey?
So I didn't know where else to go, so I went, of course, to my mom's house, and I got linked up with a resource counselor. I think they're called like peer support counselors. That was from Iredell County, and they got me into a detox program where I started to safely come off the drugs that I was on. And then I quickly went to a place at the time it was called BCRC, which was Brunswick County Recovery Center, both in North Carolina. And it's now called CRCI, which is Christian Recovery Centers, and that is here in beautiful Brunswick County. And, that was a long-term treatment program. At the time, it was 90 days. Now I think it's for much more than that. But it just really gave me a different concept on how to live structured. It wasn't necessarily overwhelmingly spiritual, or, they weren't trying to. That was the thing that really stuck out to me about the program, was even though it's a Christian program, they didn't try to jam the Bible down my throat. They just truly loved me. They supported me. They said, here, this is how we operate day to day here, and we encourage you to do so with us. It wasn't like they were like, hey, if you don't act this certain way, and if you don't, read the Bible 20 times a day, we're going to kick you out. No, it was very much, I feel like how Christ, loved sinners and tax collectors and the people that he hung out with. He met them on their level.
Right where they were at.
Where they were at. Yeah. He didn't try to change them first. He really, he loved them for who they were. And that was the kind of experience that I had at BCRC, now CRCI.
In that first year, what were the biggest challenges for you in that first year of sobriety?
I think one of the, whenever I was in the program, I lost parental rights to my son. I had lost my driver's license. I really didn't have a whole lot going for me. So I think the initial challenges are kind of getting past the immediate wants and needs. So I tried to quickly prioritize what the rest of my future was going to look like. And I allowed myself to come to a place where I knew that God had my situation handled, as far as having my driver's license back, getting a job, having a good place to live. I just gave that all to him, and I really tried to focus on, his promise for my life. And even though I didn't really, being a very early Christian, I never tried to be a Christian or read the Bible or anything like that until I became sober, and really trying to lean into the fact that it wasn't in my control anymore, and that it was in God's control. That's a big when I talk to guys now, I tell them, I say, hey, it's in God's timing. And the quicker you learn that, and the quicker that you submit and allow yourself to be in a place of humility and servitude, and knowing that you have to rely on other people and that it's not just on you anymore, I feel like God really starts to roll the ball quickly when people are ready in that sense. And that's kind of how it was for me. But that first year was, I went without a lot that first year. It was very much a very day-to-day kind of thing. The drug use, for me, a big thing that I believe in is people, places, and things. If I would have went back home, I would have been right back on drugs, because I had more stability for stuff that was around me. So of course I would have been catered to. And I think that me staying in Brunswick County in an area where I didn't have any familiarity, I didn't know anybody, I had to really lean on God and have comfort, find comfort in that. And it really helped me to not focus so much on my prior drug use and the cravings and stuff like that. It was definitely there, and it was definitely not something I'm saying it just goes away automatically, but having a different environment entirely really changes your mindset on what is a priority. And drugs, the first year for me was definitely not a priority. It was survival a lot of times in a different way.
Did you kind of think like this pink cloud went away after 30 days?
Oh, yeah.
I know that happened to me, and then this like sense of clarity happens.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it wasn't really a pink cloud within the first 30 days, because I wasn't really committed to achieving long-lasting recovery. I was definitely very much in denial about myself. I knew that I had a problem, and I knew that I had completely screwed up a lot of stuff that I had going on. But I was still kind of in denial of like, oh, well, I really, this isn't going to work for me as far as the spiritual type of thing. And so, I would say the first 30 days in the rehab program, I just kind of went with the flow. I didn't really grasp a hold of anything. I just kind of kept my head down like I was serving a stint. Like I was in jail. Like I just kind of kept my head down, like saying, "Hey, this is going to be over soon." And then,
just going through the motions.
Just going through the motions. And I think I see that a lot with a lot of guys that come in, whether it be their first time or their 100th time through a residential treatment program. They're just going through the motions until they really allow themselves to be in a place of like I said, that humility and a different brokenness, a brokenness without pride.
Especially the ones that have to be there because of like a court order.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those guys, and I would have been the same way.
Yeah.
I would have been the exact same way, thinking, "Oh man, this is great that I get to be here instead of sitting, 3 hots in a cot." And
and you'll be surprised how many guys in there are court ordered to be there, and also the girls. You heard their testimonies.
Yeah.
They either were going to go to jail or go to a recovery center.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So I didn't have, that's the other good thing about a program like CRCI is that you have to voluntarily commit yourself. And that was something that was, even for that was something totally out of my comfort zone to even, they were saying, "Hey, you need to call us at least twice a day and let us know, check in," when I was sitting in detox. And I'm thinking like, this is something I've never really had to do. I've never had to track anybody down, basically, and they really wanted to make sure you were wanting to be there. And, for me, I wanted to be there, but I hadn't fully figured out that that's where I needed to be.
Right.
It was definitely a way of getting out of the situation that I was in. I just knew that I couldn't do drugs anymore, and that was definitely something that was unhealthy for me.
Do you remember that first conversation or that first wave of emotion where you kind of felt like, "Oh, I really think I need this"? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah. So in the recovery program, we work through the 12 steps, and we usually do the first 3 steps. And I had worked on it, and my answers were all kind of the same, very, like, "Oh yeah, I voluntarily, I submit my life to God, and I know that God is real," and all this kind of stuff. And it was just kind of like, this isn't really doing anything for me. And then there was a time that it was probably about 40 days or so in. I have it written down in one of my Bibles that I had felt led to go and pray at a church service, and I remember just feeling acceptance for the first time, and really realizing that God sent his son Jesus to die for me. It wasn't just the people around me, it wasn't the pastor, it wasn't the worship team, it wasn't anybody but me. And I had felt that for the first time, and I felt a true, like, okay, like Jesus is real. He died for me. He gave me salvation, and this is the hope and freedom that I hear people talk about. And I felt for the first time acceptance in a different way, and I accepted the fact that I could be saved.
That's a beautiful thing right there.
And I was very free from that point, and a lot of things changed for me as far as the program. I really started to take it serious in a different way. It wasn't like I was trying to be Captain Recovery or anything like that. But I took it serious for me and my family.
Yeah, and I don't know if you knew this, but I kind of want to like backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
So Daniel's dad, I'm not sure if you were in Carolina Beach when you were trying to get sober or after your detox. Something happened because a mutual friend, his name is Greg George. He actually, and it's so crazy how God works, because he was grooming Daniel and grooming me. Like, it's just so weird.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is my dad had tracked me down because I had been in and off the streets for close to a year at this point, and I was on a horrible binge. And he had actually he had found me on the road, walking down the road. He picked me up. He took me to go eat some pizza off of Highway 90 in Statesville. And we're sitting there, and I don't know how in the world his acting skills are really good, or I was just really high. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, like, the whole conversation changed, and he just laid it all out to me. He was like, look, if you go and get help at this place, there's a place in Brunswick County, and it really worked well for my friend's son. And I was like, oh, you're crazy. I don't have a problem. You have a problem. I was still so set in addiction. And it was another 6 months almost before I got help.
George, he knew me through the finance company. I was helping his son. And, Josh is who runs the CRCI. I always tell people about CRCI and like, hey, well, he was telling me, hey, my son like had gotten on drugs and like I need help, he needs help, and he was just just pouring his heart out to me, and I was just like, I know a place, like, go. Well, this same guy, well, he's sober now, like he's like so like living so, it's probably been
Mr.
like,
Peachy.
Yeah, it's probably been like 8 years ago, maybe 7
Yeah,
years
or
ago.
so, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this has been a long time ago, but he was the one that told Daniel's dad about CRCI, and I was the one that told him about it.
What a connection. Y'all didn't tell me this.
I know, because I felt like God was grooming me to be Daniel's wife.
And
God was grooming. So from the moment Daniel stepped into that recovery center, like his wife was going to be Josh Torvich's sister. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that is wow.
And obviously I'm going to tell everybody about my brother's facility.
Yeah.
And I believe in recovery myself because of my brother.
Yeah.
And I mean, just being on the other side of that, it's hard to even think that you have ever done drugs. Because I don't know you
Praise
as a...
God.
I mean, yeah, it's hard for me to look at you and think that you had.
Oh, I definitely did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got the battle scars to prove it on that one.
Yeah, well, you don't seem like you.
No. Highly anointed.
Yeah.
Like, just can tell he's got the light in him.
So what routines or practices have you adopted to maintain your sobriety?
That's a good question. So definitely working the 12 steps. And it's something that I'm guilty of not being totally consistent in, but it's a mindset about the 12 steps.
But this is what you would say your third time working them?
Yes, so I've worked the steps with a couple different sponsors, and kind of currently in between working them now. That, and I would say, to those out there listening that are in early recovery, get some accountability. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of people, okay, and everyone tells you that church is a great resource, and it is a very good resource. There are people out there that want to help you. They want to help hold you accountable. You might not always like it, but get around some people that are stable-minded, that have have had drug use or haven't had drug use experience. But there's a lot of people that can really shed a lot of light into your situation and it help you stay grounded. So for me, I have a huge accountability team. Make sure that I stay serving always. I love helping people. I love helping the church any opportunity that I can. And I definitely make myself available, and I make myself transparent. And I think that's a big thing. It's not really a routine, but it's what I've tried to live my life by, is just being an open book at this point. I'm not ashamed of what I've been through, and I always say, if anything had changed in my past life that didn't bring me to this exact moment, I would regret that, not this.
Right, amen. I love that.
Well, I know Britt has some questions on the personal growth for you.
What have you learned about yourself in the past 6 years?
Ooh.
That's
so
a big
I have learned I have learned that God had a purpose for my life. I have learned that I am a lot more resilient than I ever thought I could be. There are a lot of things that happen to me daily that I used to not have the correct coping mechanisms for. So I would say that I'm a stronger person now. I'm definitely a stable and committed person. I follow up on my commitments. I'm definitely, like I said, accountable to myself and to my family and to the people that I work with. And I'm definitely I would say that I'm a more structured individual. I'm not as concerned with the future as much. I'm not really worried too much about what tomorrow has. I definitely try to focus on what I have going on right now, which is something that I used to definitely look, wonder like, what does all this mean? And I don't say I have all the answers, but I definitely have a peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I'm a very peaceful person when it comes to my purpose and where my life is at now than what I used to have.
That's good.
Yeah.
How has sobriety affected your relationships with family, friends, and colleagues?
So, drug use had really torn a lot of stuff apart for me. I've lost a lot of friends. There's a lot of people that probably still wouldn't talk to me, which is okay. And there's definitely places that I would try to avoid, not necessarily for them as much as for me.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my relationships with my immediate family, like my mother and my father, there was definitely a couple of times where they were willing to turn their backs on me. They would have definitely would have been okay knowing that I was in jail versus being on the streets, and they would have gladly probably put me there.
Yeah, you're more safe there instead of on the street.
Yeah. So if they would have had the opportunity, I'm sure they definitely would have done some stuff like that, and for good reason. I have a 8-year-old son that I had lost parental rights to, and now that I am sober and God-fearing, I was able to restore that relationship with him, and also me and his mom actually have a pretty decent relationship now. We're able to talk and communicate about him, and it not be hostile or anything like that. So it's definitely
and I like her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sobriety.
So that means a lot to me.
God is a God
I've
of.
seen y'all talk together on the phone, and it's really sweet.
It is. She's a good mom.
God is a God of restoration. And He wants things to be restored in our lives. And I think that we all know what relationships we have in life that are truly meaningful. And I think that those are given by God, because God doesn't want us to do life alone. He never expected us to do that. We are the church as a body, not in a building. Right. And, so God has definitely got a restoration, and He's totally restored, I would say, 99% of all my relationships, the ones that matter.
Right.
I just recently was able to. I had the opportunity to go to a wedding of a dear friend of mine, dear family that I had really given the runaround to in my drug addiction, and I was thoroughly just so grateful to be able to be there, and I was so humbled that they sent me an invitation. Oh gosh, I cried when I got it.
Wow.
Because it just meant so much to me, just for them to even consider, having me there. And it was such an intimate wedding.
Yeah,
it was such a small
awesome
setting,
wedding,
and such
That's
it
so
was
sweet.
It was so beautiful, and I was oh man, I was so
you were able to enjoy
thankful.
it thoroughly, like authentically.
Yeah, well, if it would have been,
I think it was our first.
if it would have been 4 years ago,
to,
I mean, it may not have happened. I don't know.
Besides family,
You might not have been invited.
Possibly, I don't know. Good people.
They love you regardless either way.
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's.
they still would have invited him. The mom they consider him like their family. They're their son, like their third son.
They didn't care where he was.
Without sobriety, I maybe wouldn't have accepted the invitation.
Yeah.
How about we
out
say
of
that?
shame, you think?
No,
Guilt?
because he would have been high and forgot that he was invited, and then wouldn't have been able to plan the
It
hotel.
could have been many different things or ways.
Yeah.
He probably would. You probably were still a good person, though, even though you were high. You just forgot a lot.
Without sobriety, I definitely would have been that. I would have been high on drugs somewhere. But without recovery, I might not have accepted the invitation. I feel like there is there's a difference.
Oh, there is a difference.
Yeah.
You gotta,
I think
you gotta
it's
work
step
it.
4 in
You gotta work it.
Isn't it step 4 in the?
I'm not sure.
But where you have to make amends.
I think that's
like 12.
No,
That's
step
the
5.
end.
It's like
Closer
step.
to the
It's
end.
like step
Okay.
5.
It's in
Don't
the
get
middle.
me messed up.
Okay, I won't. Okay, all right. How can others support a loved one who is on the path to recovery? This is something good for us to know.
So I try to put myself in my family's shoes on a lot of stuff, and honestly, I don't think that there's any right way besides try not to enable. Try to be firm in what is right. It's not okay to support someone in their addiction. Of course, you want to keep them safe, but at all costs, you also want to keep yourself safe. And when I'm not talking about just physically, I'm talking about spiritually and emotionally and mentally. Having a family member on drugs or any kind of hard life circumstance can really damage your own psyche. And I think that it's important that we look after ourselves and love that person, as best we can, but safely in many different ways.
Sometimes it has to happen from afar.
Yep.
So that you don't become as sick, because you can. Being an enabler is
Very much
unfortunate in that way.
I never knew the word codependent. I had never heard that before until recovery.
Yep.
And man, does it ring true for a lot of stuff in my life and for the people around me. I have experienced my own codependency. I've experienced being a dependent. So it's definitely something you have to look out for, and it's definitely it's not an easy place to be. And I would say the best thing to do is pray. Strengthen that prayer life. Really believe that God is going to work it out. Because God wants us to all to be sober-minded. He wants us to all be sane, and He wants us to all be living a productive life.
And what I want to end with is, what advice do you have for someone who is struggling with addiction? Also, I want to link down below the CRCI recovery link, so that they can, if you are struggling, then they can go ahead and hit on that and see how they can get help. But what advice would you have for someone that's struggling in addiction that's watching this?
I would say someone that's actively struggling now, you don't have to stay in that place. It is a choice. I know that there is a lot of media out there that says that it is something that is uncontrollable, but you do have the ability to control it, just like you have the ability to go and find and seek and do. Good. I remember I spent so much effort in trying to get high. It was unreal. And I spent such little effort just saying, I can't do this anymore. And so I would say that if you're ready, there's plenty of places in your area. There's plenty of places out of your area that would even drive to come get you. There's people that are willing to help you. I think that the overall recovery community, we really want to see people get well. And if you're struggling right now, or just struggling, you've been sober for a while, just take it day by day.
If you know somebody who is struggling, that's another thing.
Yeah, just take it day by day, and just if you are a believer, if you're not a believer, that it is a choice. You do have a choice. You are not bound by that. I thought that I was for a long time, and I came to find that it was a choice for me to decide whether or not to continue using drugs or not, and I chose not.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for being on here with us, and I'm proud of you.
Yeah, we're grateful to have you here, Daniel.
And I want to encourage you guys that if you guys need help, please, we're going to put the link below for CRCI's Recovery Center. Get some help, guys. Thanks.
Bye.